morning, and thank you for joining us at the UK and Ireland Keynote at this year's Amazon Business Exchange. I'm Molly Dobson, Country Manager for Amazon Business UK and Ireland, joining you from our offices here in London. As you've just heard from Nabil, we believe in being customer-obsessed at Amazon Business, starting with the customer and working backwards. To bring the customer voice to you all as well, you'll soon hear from two inspirational procurement leaders from UK enterprise businesses who will talk with Cheryl Clifford, our Head of Professional Services in the UK, and will share with you some of the challenges that they've faced over the past year and the projects and goals that they are prioritizing in 2022. But first, let's look at some of the recent trends we've seen in procurement and how they've affected our customers. We've seen an accelerated shift to online purchasing and e-procurement solutions as a direct result of the pandemic. This is not just specific to the UK, but also a global trend that we're seeing. And it's a shift that looks set to continue. According to a recent study by DHL Express, the global B2B e-commerce market is now expected to grow by more than 70% to $20.9 trillion by 2027. And it also expects that 80% of all transactions between suppliers and business customers to take place through digital purchasing channels by 2025. In my conversations with business leaders here in the UK, the most common priorities I've heard over this past year are increasing efficiency, particularly in the procurement department, through digital transformation and intelligent purchasing. Improving sustainability in purchasing with a focus on corporate social responsibility, or CSR. Supporting remote working policies, many companies have moved to permanent flexible working and need to find ways to support their employees' buying. Supporting local businesses within our communities. And lastly, increasing supply chain diversification and resilience. We've seen the increased focus on digital solutions coming through in our customers' changing priorities and needs. One customer whom we've seen using digital transformation initiatives to drive efficiencies in their buying is AECOM. This global engineering firm needed an auditable procurement system to simplify a purchasing process that previously involved 16 steps for each purchase. The procurement team wanted to find a system that could provide a consolidated buying experience while also meeting their organization's auditing and compliance needs. By embedding the Amazon Business online store via their punch-out catalog in Coupa, AECOM were able to cut their purchasing time by over 70%, as well as drive significant cost savings at the same time. More efficient purchasing isn't just a priority for businesses. We're seeing an equal drive among public sector institutions to reduce manual tasks and drive both time and cost savings. Stevenson Multi-Academy Trust, near Liverpool, comprises 4 educational establishments with 1,700 students and over 150 employees. Like many public institutions, the trust needed a compliant solution to simplify their purchasing and reduce costs, while also still meeting strict government audit requirements. Since rolling out Amazon Business, the trust estimates that they will have easily saved £30,000. That's the cost of employing a teacher for an entire year. Beyond expanding their budgets, Stevenson significantly reduced the time that staff were spending on purchasing, giving them more time to put back into their core job, teaching. One of the unique elements of digital transformation that we're seeing more and more is the use of intelligent technology being employed to save time and provide insights into purchasing behavior, which then leads to even more efficient processes. British multinational energy company Centrica is a really good example of the kind of efficiencies that intelligent procurement features can produce. Centrica had built up a lot of complexity and intermediaries in purchasing over the 200 years that it has been in business. Centrica's CPO and procurement strategy team saw the need to create a more agile procurement function and to simplify their processes by using technology solutions. These were used to create a fast and frictionless buying experience. Centrica embedded Amazon Business into their Ariba buying environment to create an end-to-end purchasing and transaction model. Their use of intelligent technology and machine learning helped drive a 600% reduction in purchasing journey time for Centrica employees. As businesses and organizations digitize and gain more control over their purchasing, They're then able to focus their spending power towards broader organizational-wide goals. We see this in an increased focus on supporting small and local businesses, something which we at Amazon Business are also focused on. UK-based SMEs who sell on Amazon Business have generated more than £300 million in sales in 2020 by selling to business customers, including multinational enterprises, universities, energy companies, healthcare organizations, and more. Sales generated by UK SMBs grew at an average of more than 50% every year since Amazon Business launched in the UK in 2017. And our enterprise customers here in the UK have increased their spending with these SMBs by more than 50% year over year. It's exciting for me to share that Amazon Business in the UK serves more than half of FTSE 100 companies, all of the 15 largest universities, 85% of the biggest cities in the country, and over a third of the 15 largest hospitals across the UK, as well as many other public sector organizations. With the accelerated shift to online purchasing and the increased adoption of Amazon Business, we're focused on designing procurement solutions that meet complex needs of business customers and make the purchasing experience much more seamless. Some of our more exciting features that we've launched in the past year include, as Nabil mentioned earlier, e-procurement integrations and the offering of electronic invoicing capabilities. We expanded our integration partners to over 100 of the leading procurement software applications, including Coupa, SAP Ariba, Oracle, and many more. Spend visibility. Spend visibility is another feature that we enhanced in the past year with new visualizations, enabling you to track your savings from Business Prime shipping benefits, your use of business pricing on Amazon Business, as well as adherence to things such as your spending policies and your supplier preferences for your organization. Another feature that we built out in the past year includes budget management features. Budget management lets you set spend thresholds to avoid any overspending in your organization, provides real-time usage tracking and reports, and helps save time by allowing you to create one purchase order rather than multiple manual orders. To bring to life what I just spoke about on the changes that we've seen in the past year, I am really pleased to turn over the camera now to Cheryl Clifford, who will lead a discussion with two of our inspirational business partners that we work with, Shazad Saleem, Chief Procurement Officer at Capita, and Mark Smith, Vice President of Digital Talent and Supply at BP. Mark and Shaz will share with you the successes and, of course, the challenges that they've faced in the last year, and they'll also talk about their priorities as they look ahead to 2022.
Thank you, Molly. And I'd like to welcome Mark and Shazad, who is joining us remotely, for more insights on how procurement can steer into the wider strategic objectives of your organization. So, Mark, perhaps I can start with you. How have the goals and mission of your organization evolved over the last year?
I think like many organizations over the past year, we've experienced a real acceleration in some trends that were out there already. And from a procurement standpoint, what that really looks like for us is an acceleration of this broader role that we are playing and are expected to play in areas beyond the traditional remit of procurement. So really helping the business access innovation from the supply market, develop sources of revenue, alternative commercial arrangements, really focus on some of the drivers of cost, not just the unit price, but actually the number of units that we demand and how we specify those units. And as a consequence of that, I think what you're seeing is procurement really pushing into a different space, and really needing to create the space in the organization to do just that, and equipping the people in procurement with the tools and capabilities that they need to add that value.
I see. And Shazad, what resonates in what Mark was just saying? How did the goals and mission of your organization evolve in the last year?
Like everyone else in this last 12 months, more than 12 months now, we've been working in a pandemic environment. And what that's meant for us is we've been having to make sure we've got a supply chain that's resilient. So we've had the issues, not just of Brexit, but the pandemic at the same time. So it's meant we've had to work very closely with our top 100 suppliers. And as a consequence of that, we've put in place a new framework for that top 100, particularly for the top 50, and we've just expanded that now to the top 100. And it goes beyond resilience and assurance, but it's where it's really the heart and the core of where we started.
And Shazad, how did your organization have to shift in order to meet those goals?
Capita was made out of 350 different entities. So it's a real mindset shift. They've been used to doing everything on their own, and it's a business that's grown largely through acquisition. So you can imagine they've come in, now there's this new group function, and this group function didn't exist until 2018, and I came in 2019, and it had a number of false starts. So we had to gain the trust. We had to start delivering the numbers. We had to start fixing all of the P2P processes. We weren't paying suppliers when we should have been. We had too many suppliers stuck in the process who were waiting to onboard with us. And that was something we remedied really quickly and got rid of a lot of those pain points. So that started to build the trust along with delivering the numbers, being either on budget or ahead of budget. And I think once we started to do that, we started to get a lot more engagement. And that was the biggest shift, just getting people to work together. So it was a lot more business partnering, and we weren't getting contracts at the 11th hour to go and renegotiate. We were getting it in a timely manner. And then I think the biggest shift was actually then we started to move from a kind of looking backwards, but actually looking much more forwards and starting to bring things to the organization. But I think that only came once we got this trust and then the engagement.
Mark, how did your purchasing team need to change to meet those organizational goals?
I think it was a variety of factors, but I think making sure that we were better equipped to provide insight into our supply base in terms of kind of some of the drivers of cost, some of the areas where we could be more competitive in terms of alternative supply, in terms of alternative specifications, in terms of alternative partners. And then also making sure that we were, wherever possible, making better use of distributed teams. I think obviously during the pandemic, people have been much more remote than in the past. That ability to workflow activity between various specialist teams has been really important. And then for me, the last one is I think our ability to take spend to market more rapidly in a more dynamic fashion has been a key part of the shift that we've seen in procurement.
And increasingly, we are seeing that procurement is taking on a strategic role in organizations. So how do you see the role of procurement and purchasing changing over time? Where do you see procurement having the biggest impact?
For me personally, it's hard to distill that down to one area. I think procurement can have a very rich impact across the board in an organization. I would distill that down to the impact that we can have on the P&L in terms of the traditional aspects of cost, but also on revenue and working capital. I would also say that we can have a significant impact on the kind of CSR agenda, really helping the business to understand the kind of sustainability impacts and opportunities that exist in our supply base, where the production of materials, of products or of services is generating carbon emissions, using natural resources, generating waste, and what the mitigations look like for some of those things. And then I think there's a fairly big impact on the overall people agenda. Is actually kind of how are we supporting the organisations decision making, the way we incentivize people, a lot of that comes through the supply base. And similarly for our customers, the way we access innovation from the supply chain should have an influence on the offer that we're able to make to our customers, and as a consequence, the level of kind of customer centricity should go up as a result. So I think there are a lot of things that procurement can do, and then lastly, I think procurement has always played a role in risk mitigation.
Yeah.
It's very topical right now. A number of supply chains where we sit today in the UK are under some fairly severe stress, and understanding what the alternatives look like, where that might be mitigated, has always been a role of procurement. But I think as we evolve, as the way in which we tool our people, the insights that we can provide, the better we will be at bringing the insight and the optionality that helps to address some of those risk areas.
Yeah, and you discussed so many really important aspects of any business, of any company. Shazad, over the past years, how have you seen procurement become more strategic for your organization? And the types of things that Mark is talking about in terms of the areas procurement touches, where do you see procurement having the biggest impact in your company?
So it's very much about getting the numbers right, and it has been for most procurement functions. Right, let's deliver the savings. We've got these top-down challenges that we've got to meet, and I think historically, because they were top-down and done in isolation from the business, you just had this massive disengagement from the organisation. So one of the first things I did when I came in was to start to make sure we had a much stronger interlock with the organisation. We had point people for each of the different divisions. And that started to build this level of engagement, and we started to throw up ideas together. So I think that was one of the sort of key changes. And then we could start moving from this, from a position of just delivering what was put in front of us to, okay, how do we now, as this organisation is trying to make big savings, because one of the aspects of going from 6 divisions to 3 divisions, obviously as part of a restructure, you need to make savings, and we obviously had to support that, but we needed to be much more transformative in the way that we worked, and that really meant working across all of the different divisions to bring out new ideas, looking at what was going on with the market trends, so we could bring actually things that the business perhaps potentially hadn't thought of, more technology, more innovation. There's a lot more focus now on our supply chain and making sure we've got constant delivery. We've got, Capita's got many clients. Most of our suppliers actually are delivering for our clients. So how do we ensure that we don't have any interruptions in that supply chain? So that's been one of the biggest things that we've put in place in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. And then I think the third aspect, and I'm doing it very much at a summary level, but the third aspect for me is around being a responsible business. And how do we ensure Capita's got an ethical supply chain? And what I mean by that, so we talked about resilience, but how do we make sure that we as a business are doing the right things for society, for Capita, for the suppliers who we're working with, and just for example, looking at the amount that we spend with SMEs. So we were very much in line with the government guidance on that. And we spend at least £1 in every £3 with SME suppliers. We're actually more stringent than the government prompt payment code in terms of paying our suppliers promptly. So there's a big focus on that. And then latterly, I think in the last 12 months in particular, what's really come out is our focus on diversity in the supply chain. So this is looking at where we've got, female-owned organisations, BAME-owned organisations. And it's very interesting in terms of trying to even get hold of that level of detail. So what we're building at the moment is, do we have the visibility of that within our supply chain? And now that we've got that visibility, what do we do with it? So we shifted our adjudication and the way that we now go out to tender. So when we're looking at, when we look at our scorecard, it's now got a much greater weighting to being a responsible business and to pulling out that diversity. And that's something we now keep a much more regular check on. And we've got KPIs in place to make sure that it's not just a tick box exercise, we've completely rewritten our supplier charter in line and in accordance with that, and all of our supplier base has to sign up to that supply charter. And even for the legacy suppliers who missed that, we're going back now round through them and making them sign up to the charter as well.
And so, Shazad, most organizations are somewhere along a journey of digitally transforming purchasing as a way to drive efficiencies, to reduce costs. What digital strategies have you adopted that had the largest impact on cost reduction in your organization?
Once we'd got the best out of our current platforms, we started to think about what else could we do. And one of the areas in particular was around IT. We have an IT sourcing desk where all of our IT transactions go through. We triage all of the requests that come in, but it is painful and it's clunky. So this is where actually we started to do some work with Amazon on this. And it's a much more frictionless process for us now, where all of the IT transactions go through there. Now, it's not just the IT transactions. We've actually trialed a number of other things like gym equipment for the for fire colleges and the like. But it's where we started, and we started a sensible threshold, and we're looking to build from there. And what we're looking to do right now with Amazon is working on an instance of how can we do single sign-on. How can we work within our DOA? So that's an opportunity again for us. But I think the biggest success has been leverage what we already have and then build on that, rather than trying to bring in lots of more, new, more shiny toys to play with.
Thank you. And Mark, is digitalization just about reducing cost? What impact has digitalization had on your procurement team?
It's definitely about reducing cost in part, and in particular, I would say that a number of our digital investments have really supported us being able to access better market pricing as a result of either leveraging our volume, completing more competitive bidding activity. I think we've been able to really leverage our economies of scale from an execution perspective, passing the work to expert teams who are in the market on a very regular basis, doing more competitive bidding activity, and then using tooling to access dynamic pricing in the marketplace. So real-time pricing against standard catalogues of goods or services, and making sure that we've got the real up-to-date competitive price from the market. That definitely has helped us to drive cost out of the organisation. But on top of that, we also use our digital tooling to improve the data that we get from our purchasing. And that helps us to move the procurement organisation from their role as central to the execution of a compliant process, and much more into the kind of strategic and insightful advisor on the way in which we're using the supply market and where that could be optimized. And I think that is where our digital investments are really starting to pay off, and helping us to shift to an even greater form of value creation.
And so, Shazad, what is top of mind for your procurement function right now? What goals, what purchasing initiatives are you prioritizing?
Like I said earlier, just fixing what's there in front of you, and I don't just mean from a systems perspective, but I mean all of our P2P processes. So just get the basics right, get everything transform from within, really get those core capabilities fixed, and then once you've done that, then start to think about who can you partner with in a space that you don't have that skill set, or you want to tap into a more competitive marketplace, deeper discounts, like we are doing with Amazon, for instance. So you've got a platform, gives us a wider set of products to look at, and it's a much more competitive marketplace, and it saves the team a lot more time rather than them having to go out and look at each of those individual transactions. So they're the sorts of things we're doing more of, bringing partners into a space where we haven't got the core capability yet, or actually it's enhancing to it's accretive to the team, and that's again something that's works well. And then the third piece, just going back to what I said earlier, really building on being a responsible business And I think that's going to, just grow and grow and grow. And it's similar to what you said before in terms of some of the initiatives that you called out. It's interesting because we put in place science-based targets, and very quickly, without having to almost do anything with our supplier base, we were up to 50% of the supplier base who'd already had some sort of pledge within their organisation to improve their targets. So that just goes to show the way that it's changing. And I could see that we've gone back a number of years just to see where we were, and there's a real upward curve. And now we're being proactive about engaging with organisations and making sure that they're setting science-based targets, which are in line with ours. And that way, we can move much more progressively towards those targets. But there's already a shift out there, and our clients want the same thing. So when our clients come to us and they're working on bids, they're saying exactly the same thing. They want to be working with SMEs. They don't just want to be working with just the large corporates. And they also want to be looking at more diverse organisations. And we work a lot with government. It's one of our core divisions. And we're constantly in with government, talking to them about these sorts of things and initiatives, and what can we do? What do their other partners do? And we're learning a lot from that as well.
And Mark, what are your priorities for the procurement team and purchasing?
I think significantly it's about continuing to take friction out of our buying processes, and using digital tools to do that. I think it's then off the back of that building on the increased capacity in the organisation, in the procurement organisation, to get after some of those other sources of value that I talked to. I think that we've got some great untapped potential in the procurement community as a whole, actually. And I think that as we move from execution of process into informed and strategic advisors, I think that the insights that we can provide our people will really unlock some of that extra value. And I think for us, some of the things that looks like are innovating to support growth in new markets, our transition to lower carbon forms of energy, to identify potential new digital products and services that will help our industry as a whole. And of course, continuing to look at where are there opportunities to optimize cost, and potentially grow revenue in the organisation. So there's a lot of things that I think are priorities for us. And I should mention as well, I think that insight also really supports our sustainability goals. That ability to look deeply and forensically into our supply chain, and really understand where there are opportunities to improve our sustainable footprint, but also to look at how we use our spend and place our spend in the market to support diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. And I think that improved insight and ability to do that is really supporting our key priorities as a procurement organisation.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because Amazon Business is working hard on creating ways our users, your users, can identify products which support those initiatives they care so much about, like the Climate Pledge Friendly Guided Buying Policy, where products are preferred in the instance that they meet the accreditation requirements of the Climate Pledge and partners. Also, we see in Amazon Business an increasing awareness of people wanting to understand where their products are coming from, and we support it. So look, thank you both for your time today. Thank you, Mark, for joining us here. Thank you, Shazad, for joining us remotely. We hope you enjoy the rest of ABX. There's a lot to see, and I wish you well with achieving those purchasing goals over the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you to both Mark and Shaz for being with us here today to share their insights, and thank you all for joining us for this UK and Ireland keynote. Next up, I'll join you again with Phil DeBrun, Director of Enterprise Strategy at Amazon Web Services. Phil and I are going to discuss the digitalization of business operations in more detail, and specifically we'll talk about how you can successfully lead change in your organization. Enjoy the rest of Amazon Business Exchange 2021.